All right, so I'm real quickly going to kind of finish up our epithelium and then we'll move on to connective tissue. So epithelium, one of the main things we talk about that is doing a lot of absorption and secretion. And one of the ways it's actually secreting quite a bit is within different glands. So if you think mammary glands, salivary glands, and then other exocrine glands like pancreas and other ones like that. Really doing a lot of secretion that way. So most of our glands are going to be at least a good chunk of them made of the epithelial tissue. They're what's going to actually be making whatever substance is secreted. And like I said, it can be things like sweat and sweat glands. It can be mucus or mucin and mucus glands, different hormones, different enzymes, really among other things. In terms of glands, they look like a lot of different things here. You can see they have that luminal side open. And this is, I'm not wanting you to know that there is all these different types of glands. I'm not going to ask you to describe the difference between a compound alveolar and a simple alveolar or a simple tubular. I just want you to know that there's different structures of these glands, and all these are still considered glands, even though they might be very distinct in how they look. So you can see the simple tubular or branched ones here, simple alveolar with a more cul-de-sac end on it. You can see the compound ones of that, and then you can a lot of times see some compound combinations of these as well. And there's good examples of most of these on almost everything except for just a simple alveolar. So the other thing to realize is these are in the perfect side view. Realize if you ever look at this in a histology slide, like we will see in some of the PowerPoints that I'm going to give you of actually some of the tissues to look at, you can see that really when you look at these under the scope, you're not going to see the duct to the surface and everything else along with it. So we're going to see that there's two main classes of glands. You have your endocrine and exocrine glands. So endocrine glands are really what make up the endocrine system. They don't have any ducts that secrete the substance into or into a lumen like that. These are actually secreting hormones into either interstitial fluid or into the bloodstream, and then that is carrying it to where it needs to go. Where exocrine glands, these are glands that have a duct. So like a salivary gland, this kind of disturbing picture of a cadaver, you can see here is the parotid salivary gland, and here's the duct taking that to the mouth. So they are lined with an epithelial lined duct, and that is going to take those into those areas. So these are things like you'd see in sweat glands, mammary glands, salivary glands, obviously. We can also kind of talk about unicellular exocrine glands. The goblet cell would actually be an example of a single-celled exocrine gland. Obviously, there's a lot of multicellular exocrine glands, so a lot of times these will have little areas grouped together of where the secretions are being made called acini. So like the pancreas, they talk about pancreatic acini. Again, you're going to usually move those to some other area, sometimes another lumen like the digestive tract, that the pancreas with ducts moving the stuff from those ducts into the small intestine, for example. And a lot of these glands, like the liver, like the pancreas, are going to be subdivided into these little lobes that have one main duct empty in that area. So you can see something like this. These would be the different lobules right here. And then you can see the main ducts taking it out of this particular gland. And like I said, the acini or acinus is where the secretions mainly happen, in the duct is what's moving that to the different areas. In some cases, we will also have these kind of muscular epithelial cells called myoepithelial cells that sometimes will contract to help move this stuff as well. Again, lots of different types of these glands. We see a number of different types here. We can classify them by this different anatomy of these glands. The other way, and I've already showed you those, the other way we classify these is by their pretty much how they secrete. So we're going to see that there's three main types on this one. Your kind of normal sweat glands that are used for thermoregulation. So like if it's hot out and you start sweating on your forearm, for example, this is what we call a merocrine gland. These ones, it's little vesicles that are made inside the cell that go to the surface and open up that allow whatever the secretion is to do this. And then again, saliva, your kind of normal thermoregulation sweat does this. Tears, and a lot of other things like the pancreas, gastric glands of the stomach do it this way. Apocrine glands, these are a little bit different. So these are kind of sweat glands that are more the armpit and pubic regions, as well as the mammary glands, what's happening on these ones, it's not just a vesicle that's going to the surface and dumping its contents. It's kind of the luminal half of the cell is actually being broken up and becoming that secretory product. So, and then these get replaced, and again, you get these secretions by these big, like these pieces kind of coming off the luminal side of it, but it's not the whole cell. Where a holocrine gland, you're going to get a whole cell filling up with whatever the product is, and then that whole cell is going to come apart. So your sebaceous glands, for example, your oil glands in the skin do this. And in this case, the whole cell is breaking apart, and then we just make new cells that take the place of those.